How's it going, guys? Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about how to get better minimal tech house drums. This is going to be inspired by artists such as Cloonee, PAWSA, Bibi, Black Child, and many more. So we're going to be talking about a couple key elements here, starting from sound selection, auto panning, release times on your drums, and textures. So all of these are going to go hand in hand to get that minimal tech house style. I've had the opportunity to talk to small artists that are signed by Hellbent and other record labels, and this tutorial is going to cover some of the key takeaways that I heard from their experience in producing this type of music. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so first thing I'm going to walk you guys through is a quick demo track that I made for this. And it's going to be like a little minimal Latin tech house track. And we're going to be utilizing this throughout the entire lesson. So let's go ahead and hear it.
Hello. 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 Hello.
All right, guys, so the first thing you want to do is focus on using high quality samples and also the sound selection, right? The sample choice. So one way to know how to get good sounds that's right for your genre, for example, minimal tech house, is reference an artist that you like. For example, Cloonee or Bibi. If you pay attention to really achieve that minimal tech house feel, they're using sounds that have a short release to make space in the track, right? That's it's part of the minimal sound. So if you pay attention to my demo track here, I have some sounds that I carefully crafted for this style. For example, the San Jose kick and my closed hat. So let's hear how they all sound together. As you can hear, they sound pretty tight. And how do you achieve that? Let's just say, you know what, Navarro, I don't want to buy your sample pack. Whatever, I want to use a splice sample pack. I have an easy fix for you. Say you drag and drop a sample into an audio file, which I enjoy. I like audio files. If you don't like audio files and you like drum rack, I'll show you how to do that later. But what you would do is you would double click into the sample. You would go into warp, beats, transients, and then you would click this first one here for the release, and you just mess with the level. So at 100%, it's going to have the longest length, and then at 0, it's going to have the shortest length. So for example, it sounds like this. And that's how you get that tight, minimal tech house drum feel. So really important that you guys use high quality samples that fit your track. All right, so I feel like this was a little self-explanatory, but I think it's really important that you choose high quality samples. But not only that, you want to reference other tracks of artists that you like. So that way you choose the correct samples, right? Whether it's the kick, right? If it's short and punchy, hi-hats or percussions, you want to get that short release kind of sound for this type of style. But you can use this method for any style that you want, right? Referencing and figuring out what kind of sounds that you're looking for the style of track that you're making. All right, guys, so the next tip we're going to talk about is auto panning. Auto panning comes in super clutch when you're using hi-hats or top loops. For example, I have Ojos Locos top loop. And it's awesome. Right out of the box, it's already good. But, for this song or for this little demo I had, I wanted to add a little more movement, right? Make some space in the mix. And what I did here is I just dragged and dropped an auto pan. Very standard. I didn't adjust the wave here. And I like to do just a little bit, right? Like 30%. And it sounds something like this.
Hello.
As you can see there, 30% goes a long way. Panning left and right adds a little more movement and groove to your track, and it's awesome. I see a lot of these artists use that in their percussions and hi-hats, so I think it's a really cool tool to use. Best thing, it's stock. It's a stock Ableton plugin. You can't beat that, and it does a great job. So what are we doing here? So this tip is important because it's going to add a little bit of space to your mix, but at the same time, it's going to add a little bit of a stereo imaging effect. And we have a special customer and guest here. Give me a second. That doesn't let me record. Say hi. So you can use this not only hi-hats, but also percussions, right? Pretty much anything besides the low end, right? You want to do the mids and above. All right, so another way to spice up your drums actually isn't really, it could be drums, but they're textures. Textures are awesome. So they're going to add a lot of rhythm and groove to your track. And I have an example here that I have in my pack that I just dragged and dropped into this demo, and it sounds like this. And as you can see, it's very subtle in the background, not really taking up too much space, but adding groove to the track. So these are awesome because, you can mess around with different types of sounds. Like I've even seen some people use like acid style sounds like Black Child. I really, really like textures. Highly recommend them. I'm going to have a couple or several of them in my pack. All right, some more examples of textures are like this. So a lot of the smaller artists that are signed that I've spoken to really emphasize textures, because within this style that's huge. Just because it's very minimal, you want to have this really short release, very kind of stuttery type of texture in the background to fill up space, but not too much, right? Still leaving room to breathe and still keeping true to minimal tech house. All right, guys. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about velocity. This tip is cool because it kind of combines two tips into one. One obviously being velocity, and then two having the variety of drum patterns. So let me give you an example of how we're going to utilize this. So instead of going forward to the floor, the kick, we're going to add some variety. First thing we're going to do is use a reference track. This one's by Alan Nieves. I think it's called You and That. So let's hear it first, and then I'll dive into what he's doing here.
You and that booty. You and that booty.
So one thing that you notice is that the kick isn't forward to the floor, which is great because it adds sort of variety and, you know, different type of rhythm than other tracks, or than most tracks, I should say. So if you do notice on the kick, though, it's not full volume all the time. So you can hear a difference in the volume or the velocity of the kick, right? So what I did is I just did a quick little drum loop so I can show you guys. But this drum loop that I made sounds like this. And as you can see, you can hear the kick slowly go up in volume. So the way I did that is I put it into a drum rack, right? I have my kick, my hi-hat, and then I have my clap. So as you can see here in my arrangement, you can see some of the kick notes are brighter than others. What that is signaling is that the velocity down here is lower than the ones that are brighter, right? So now let's listen to it at full volume and see the difference. You see how it doesn't have that feel? Now let's reverse what we just did and look at the difference. Now you're adding more groove. Now it has more of a natural feel to it as opposed to a robotic feel. And of course, guys, you don't have to use it for kicks. You can use it for hi-hats, percussions, or all three, right? Maybe even some synths as well, like pianos, virtual instruments. You can use that on the MIDI. Another thing I wanted to go over that I mentioned earlier that's really important is the transient or the release, right? So I did it earlier on an audio file, but this is how you do it on a MIDI file. And let's say you're using the simpler or sampler or whatever it is. Typically, you want to go to your one shot. You know, you want to warp it depending on the sample. So this one, like we have the hi-hat, as you can see. So it sounds like this. And all you have to do is put it to transient, put the mode here, bring down the envelope. So very similar to how we're doing the audio file, it just has a different format here. So yeah, hopefully these tips are helpful. I know today was a little bit of a short one, but I just wanted to get something out to add some value to you guys' production. So what's really cool about this velocity tip is that it's humanizing the sound. What do I mean by that? Let's say you're playing drums, right? And you have your bass drum, your kick drum. All the velocity is saying is how hard are you striking that kick drum? Sure, it's a little bit of loudness, but at the same time, it's how hard are you striking it? So you're getting a variety of sounds. It's not all fixed, right? It's not just loud forward to the floor the entire time. All right, guys, so those are just some of the techniques that I use and I've heard others use for minimal tech house. I really hope this adds value to your production. If you found this tutorial useful, please consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support the channel, please go to croconation.com. I left a link down below in the description. And that's where we have our sound banks that also helps with your workflow. But once again, guys, thank you for sticking through the end of the video, and I hope you have a good one.